Hello and welcome to another edition of 360 Half Seconds. My name is Kia from 360 Vet Sales, and with me today is 360 Vet Sales CEO Matt Arena. Matt, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you, Kia?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good.
So before I give you the topic, I'm going to remind everybody how this works on 360 half seconds. I'm going to give Matt a question. He has 360 half seconds or 3 minutes to answer my question. And so, Matt, are you ready for today's topic?
I'm ready.
Okay, so Matt, today's question is if I'm a veterinary owner right now and I'm thinking about an exit, either soon or down the road, how do I increase the value of my practice?
Good question. So as we do this, we see practices of all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and there's definitely some traits that stand out more than others as far as getting maximum value. Um, I would say I'm going to try to list them off. I think there's a list of several things that make a difference, but let's start with revenue. So one of the things that is really important is revenue growth. You don't want to have a revenue decline and then go to market because you're going to see you'll have a difficult time selling and you'll also see a declining valuation. What you want to typically see is 5% growth in revenue year over year or a trailing 12-month period over prior trailing 12-month period. I would say 5% growth rate's the minimum for kind of like what would be considered maximizing value. Another big one is Google reviews.
Mm,
A lot of buyers take very seriously your Google review score. So you want to have, I would say at a minimum, you want to have a 4.5 Google review, 4.5 star Google review. That's really important. I think some buyers also look at Yelp. But I mean, just Google is enough in my opinion. The gold standard is probably 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, 5 stars. But if you have below a 4.5, you're not really maximizing value. Another thing that I would think of is your financial performance. And what I mean by that is kind of like industry standards from a margin standpoint, or we call it margin analysis. The
mm,
practices that do really well are the practices that are at or very near or above 20% EBITDA as a percentage of revenue. And again, your EBITDA is your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. For most of you, you can start with probably your net operating income and then add those items to your net operating income to get to an EBITDA. Um, but having that number be around 20%, that's ideal.
mm.
If you're down at like 8 or 9 or 10%, it's less ideal. So you really want to work your way up towards or as close as you can to 20%. Along those same lines, very good accounting is important. You want to have consistency. You want your numbers to be consistent. You want your doctors to be consistent. You want everything to be clean, um, structured, organized. You don't want to switch accountants 3 or 4 different times over the last 3 years. Have your accounting look different every single year. You want it to be nice and consistent and clean and organized. You also want to make sure that you're paying your DVMs something that's consistent with 20% pro sale. That's pro sale right now is anywhere from 19% on the very low end, 19% of production that is, all the way up to 22, 23% of production. There's obviously outliers to that, but I would say 20% is a good standard number to use.
Mm.
Because otherwise you're going to see possibly negative adjustments to your EBITDA and evaluation modeling. Um,
And that's because they want to normalize salaries.
yeah, because if a doctor leaves, they have to replace the doctor and they have to be competitive in order to recruit. A buyer would. So that's
So
why
the
that
buyer,
is.
when they do their modeling, they're actually going to put in whatever a normalized pro sale salary
Yeah,
should be for that DVM.
exactly.
If you're
Yep,
not paying them, they're going to make that adjustment anyways
exactly.
in the valuation. Okay.
Yep. And then I think the last thing that comes to mind, and this one's probably oftentimes overlooked, a lot of practices have and don't have hospital managers. And if you
Mm,
want to maximize value, you want to have a very good hospital manager. Hospital managers is an important part of a practice. They generally operate in somewhat of a leadership position among staff. And they're kind of the glue that keeps revenue coming in the door. It's an important role. So having a good hospital manager is very important. And just like we talked about with the pro sale payment to your associate DVMs, we also see that several buyers, if a hospital doesn't have a hospital manager, they're going to hit your EBITDA in a negative way to allocate funds so that they can go out and hire a good hospital manager.
Another component of a good hospital manager is like if you actually do go through with a sale, having a good hospital manager that you trust and might be in the know makes that sale process a lot easier because usually
Absolutely.
they're the person that has the keys to everything, right? They know how to
Yes.
pull every report, they know how to get everything you need. So, when you go through a sale, turnaround time becomes really important.
Yep.
And having a good hospital manager that knows how to access everything that a buyer is going to ask for and then be able to present that to them cleanly is beyond, I can't
Yeah.
express how helpful that is. We've seen that ourselves
Yes.
several times with certain clients. You brought up something that I thought was interesting where you said, let's say your EBITDA is like 8 or 9% and you need to get it over to 20%. Is there like, some lever that you can pull to do that? Is it a case by case basis that you have to look into, the performance of the clinic to figure out how do you get from like 8 to 9% to 20%? Is there anything you can share about
Uh,
how do you
it,
do that?
It's really case by case basis. I can give you some examples. I mean, the first place that you'd always want to look is in your pricing. Are you making margin on all the services and things that you're selling?
Mm.
So doing a full margin analysis on every single service and product offering, because you have to make sure you're marking things up appropriately. Otherwise, you're not making any money on certain things. That's going to lower your EBITDA number. Um, the other thing that we see sometimes is salary paid doctors where they're not on pro sale. They're paid a fixed salary, and then there's not a lot of drive for production. And so you see a doctor maybe making, yeah, I don't know, they could be making any amount of money, but making a fixed salary and then having their production being, let's say, 400,000. But if they're making a six-figure salary or better, sometimes that math doesn't math. And so you're paying them more than a 23% production. Maybe you're
Right.
paying them 30%. Well, you're really overpaying the market on that example. And when you're doing that, that can hurt your margin. The other thing is just cost management. Really working on cost of goods sold. That's a big area where we see it. We know that that's one of the biggest areas where platform buyers pick up margin points. That's a fact. I know that as an individual practice, it's probably difficult to negotiate down that low, but use this as leverage. I mean, we know that others are getting it out there for better prices. There are certain groups in the veterinarian space that if you join the groups, you get their pricing, and that'll help lower your cost of goods sold margin. So you can look into those things. Obviously, if you have questions on any of this, reach out and contact us. We're happy to provide more insight. But these are a great question, Kia. A great follow-up question.
Yeah, and then one other follow-up question. I know that in the last year or so, maybe 2 years, going on 2 years now, one of the things that buyers have been looking at is the number of patient visits. Is that something that's going to affect you? And if so, what are some of the things that you can do to increase patient visits?
That's a good one. Because, and I'll explain the reason for that. The gotcha there is I had mentioned revenue growth, and let's say your revenue is growing 5 or 6%. Some buyers will look at that and go, well, let's find that gotcha there because let's pretend you increase all of your pricing by 7% or 5%. Your growth is really flat. You just increase pricing.
Right.
So what they're looking for, and sometimes we get asked for this type of reporting, is to look at month over month, year over year number of visits, because that's really showing you what is the foot traffic coming in the door. If you had 100 customers last year and 200 customers this year, you're growing. Pricing irrelevant, you're growing.
Right.
Pricing is a little bit of an artificial thing because if your demand isn't going up and you're just increasing pricing, that's a slippery slope that'll get you over time because who knows what happens in the economy. You may have to adjust pricing down at some point. Now
Yep.
you're not truly growing. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying to explain why they look.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Absolutely, that makes sense. You want it to be real growth.
Yes.
You don't want it to be artificial growth.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And I think this is a good segue. You had mentioned that these are all good things to take into account, but really for your particular practice, you know, there could be unique reasons that this is happening. And the best thing you can do is get a valuation done, in my
Yeah.
opinion. You know,
Yeah.
we offer a free valuation, and part of the reason we offer a free valuation is not just so you can find out what your practice is worth today. Obviously, that's an important component of it, but it's also so that we can gain some insight as to what's going on in your practice. And then give that back to you, give that feedback back to
Yeah.
you and say, hey, here's what we're seeing. If you were able to fix, these three or four things, these are the things that will make your particular practice value go up.
Yeah. It's a really good point. Having the valuation done helps us give you a punch list of things that you may or may not need to work on. And the reality of it is, the best thing you can do to get maximized value is be sale ready. And not everybody's always sale ready when they come to us. And the ability for you to come to us as soon as possible, get a valuation, find out what you could change to make yourself sale ready, that opens a lot of doors for you because these things, you can't fix all these things with, in a minute. Sometimes it takes time. It might take 6 months to a year. But if you know now, you could start working on those things and get yourself to a position where you are sale ready. And then the decision's yours and when and if you want to sell.
And we've had situations like this, right? We've had situations where people have come to us, they think they're ready to sell today. We go ahead and do the valuation and we tell them, hey, listen, your valuation looks great. We think it's worth, I'm going to make up a number. We think it's worth $4 million. However, we've also uncovered these few things in your valuation that if you were to go address these things and fix these things in 6 months from now, your practice valuation could be worth $1 million more than that, maybe even more.
Yep.
And it comes down to, is it worth, going and tweaking something for 3 to 6 months to gain, several $100,000 or millions of dollars in value? I think
Yep.
oftentimes it is.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, Matt, thanks so much for your comprehensive answer. That was a really good topic.
Yeah.
And for anybody that wants to have a free evaluation done, we're like we said, we're happy to do it for you. You can reach me. I'm Kia, Kia, at 360vetsales.com. You can also reach out to Matt. He's Matthew with two T's, Matthew at 360vetsales.com. Shoot us a note. Let us know what you're thinking. If all you want is evaluation, yeah, like say that. We'll do a quick call, understand a little bit more about your practice, and then we'll get all the reports from you that we need to do the valuation, and we'll have it done for you in just a few days.
Yeah, and really important to add to that is when we do evaluation, once we have it done, we do a pretty comprehensive review of the valuation. We go over a lot of the things we discussed on this call with you in detail. And again, it's a good Q&A session for you, and we'll share with you just about everything we know about how you can be more prepared for sale or what the industry or the market's doing.
Awesome. Yep, exactly. So Matt, thanks again, and
Thank
until
you.
next time.
Thanks, Kia. Appreciate it.